Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So far in the arrays playlist we have seen brief introduction about arrays and its classification. While explaining the classification of arrays, I have explained all the different types of arrays based on the dimensions. Now in this video we will be talking about how to create arrays in Python. Now for creating arrays in Python language, we have a built-in library of array. So the following are the steps to create array in Python using the library. So first you need to import the array library and then you need to call the array function from that array library. Now the basic array function inside the array library takes two arguments. Inside the first argument, we need to mention the type of the array, and in the second argument, we need to mention the elements of the array. Now, as you know that inside an array, all the elements are of the same types, therefore we need to mention the type of the array in the first argument. Now, data types can be integer, float, strings, and so on. For each data type, there is a special symbol associated with it. So you need to go through it. Here I have mentioned for integer and float, which is I and F respectively. Now let's implement this. So as you know that the first step is to import the array library. So we can import the library with the help of the import keyword, and then we have to mention the name of the library, which is nothing but arrays. Now here I am giving an alias for the array so that in future if I need to call the library, then I can only use the short form of it, which can be done with the help of as keyword. Now I am defining a variable a which will store the array. Now the second step is to call the function which is associated inside the array library. For doing that, we need to write the name of the library. Here we have stored the name of the library in an alias which is arr dot the name of the function. Now here we are calling the array function, and you can see that the array library contains all these methods and functions. So you can go through it in your free time and explore different functions and methodologies inside array library. Now here you can see that the array library takes two arguments. First is the type code, which is nothing but the data type, and the second argument is the list of the elements which are associated inside the arrays. So here we are constructing an array of integers. So the symbol for integers is I. Make sure you need to mention the symbols inside the quotes. And inside the second argument, I am defining a list of some elements. Make sure this list of elements are associated inside square brackets only. Now let's execute this cell. So you can see that the cell has executed successfully, and now the array has been stored inside the variable a. Now let's print the variable a. So you can see that the variable a now contains the array of the elements that we have mentioned before. Now let's check the type of the array that we have created. So you can clearly see that the type of the variable a is array. Now similarly, let's try to define some other type of array. So here in the variable f, we are going to create array of the elements which are of the type float. Float means decimal. So you can see here I have called the library, and inside the library we have the function array. Inside that the first argument is f. F denotes the symbol for the float variable, and the second argument takes the list of the elements. So now I am printing the f variable. So you can see that the array has been created of the data type float. Now let's try to print the type of the array f. So here the type is array itself. Now one thing you can notice that whatever the element type which is there inside the array, irrespective of that, the type of the variable in which the array is defined will always be the class array itself. Now as you know, the rule of the array is that it should contain the elements of the same type. Now let's try to violate this rule inside this function. So here we have defined an array of integers. Inside this I am mentioning some integers as well as I am mentioning character also. So here you can see that I have mentioned y character, as well as we are also mentioning the string type and the float type. So let's try to print this variable. Pause the video and tell me whether this cell will execute or not. So you can clearly see that the cell has thrown an error. What the error is? It's the type error. Type error inside which an integer is required but float and strings are given. So now you should always make sure that the elements are of the same types inside the array. So now I hope that you have got the first way to create the arrays, in which we are using the array library. Now let's move on and see that what is the another way to create arrays inside Python language. So the another way is by using the NumPy library. The full form of NumPy is numerical Python. So this library is extremely famous for performing operations on arrays. Now what are the specialities of this library? So it is a built-in package inside the Python language. It is used for working with arrays. You can perform complex multiple operations using this particular library. Third speciality is that it facilitates the advanced mathematical, and it also helps in dealing with huge amount of data. So it's always recommended to use NumPy library whenever you are dealing with machine learning and data science kind of problems. Additionally, this NumPy library is also used in linear algebra. Now let's have a look at the steps that are used to initialize any array using the NumPy library. So the first step is to import the NumPy library. Now the NumPy library contains huge amount of functions, but we need to import the array function inside the NumPy library. Next step is to pass the array list inside the function. Now make sure your array list should be enclosed in square brackets. And finally your array will be created. So here you can see the syntax for assigning any NumPy array, which is nothing but numpy.array function. Inside that array function you need to pass the array list. Now you need not to mention the type of the elements inside the array inside this. Now let's implement this using Python language. So here we are going to create array using NumPy library. So the first step, as you know, is that we need to import the NumPy package inside the Python. If your system doesn't have NumPy package installed, then you can simply install it with the help of the command pip install numpy. You can find the command in the comment section. So here we have imported the NumPy package and we have given an alias for it, which is np. Now we need to initialize the array, so we will look for the function array inside it. So we have np dot. You can find that there are so many functions, but we are bothered about arrays now, so we will go with the array function. Now you can see the definition of the function. It says that you need to pass the argument as the array list, and there is no compulsion that you need to mention the data type of the array, because the NumPy package is smart and it will automatically recognize the type of the elements which are there inside the array from the first element itself. So here I am passing the elements list 1 2 3 4. So here we are creating an array of integers. So we are storing this inside the variable num array. Now let's try to print the variable num array. So you can see that the variable prints the list of elements which are there inside this array. So this is how you need to create the NumPy arrays. Now let's check the type of the array. So here you can see that it has the type NumPy array. ND denotes the n dimensions. In our case, we have only mentioned a single dimension array. Now let's check the dimensions that are there inside our array. This can be done with the help of the ndim attribute. So this will check the dimensions of the array. In our case, we have only a single sequential array, therefore it has displayed 1 as the dimension. Now let's try to define any other random array of other type. So here you can see that we are going to create an array of elements with the type float. So this can be done with the help of np.array, and inside that you need to pass the argument as a list of floating elements. Similarly, let's try to define a string array. Now pause the video and try to write the code for this in the comment section. If you have written the code, then you can verify this. So we are declaring a variable string array which will store the array of strings. Now this can be done by passing a list of strings inside the array function of NumPy. So let's print this. You can see that our array has created. Similarly, you can try to create any other array of any data type, for example boolean. Now let's try to define an array which violates the rule of arrays, which is nothing but it stores the elements of same data type. So here I am passing a list of element which contains the integers, floats, strings. Now let's execute this cell. So you can see that the cell has got executed successfully. It's obviously weird, right? Because the rule for array is that it should only contain the elements of the same data type. Now let's try to print the variable any which contains the elements of different data types. So can you just observe that the elements which were having the integer data type, float data type are now converted into strings. So now if you mention any elements with a string inside the array, so all the elements will be automatically converted into strings and the array rule will not get violated. Now what if our list of element does not contain string at all but contains the elements of different data types, for example floating and integers. So now you can see that when we print this, all the elements which were of the integer data type are now converted into float. So you can see the priorities. The string data type has the highest priority, followed by the floating data type, followed by the integer data type. This is how you can create arrays using NumPy package. Now let's have a look at the third way of creating arrays in Python language. The third way is to use a list data type, which is an inbuilt data type in Python. The basic difference between arrays and list data type is that the list data type can support the elements which are of different data types. But you can use list data type as arrays by simply mentioning all the elements of the same data type. Now this can be done by passing the list of elements inside square brackets. This is the third way of creating arrays in Python. Now let's try to implement this. So now we will implement the creation of arrays using the list data type. So this is the third way of creating arrays. So this way is kind of simple. I'm defining a variable arr over here. In this way of defining arrays, you need not to import any package. because this is a built-in data type of Python. So here you can see that I have enclosed all the elements inside a square bracket. Now let's print the array variable. So you can see that our array has got initialized. Now let's try to print the type of the array. So you can see that the type of the variable arr is list. Now let's try to define an array which contains the elements of different data types. So here I have mentioned the element of data type integer, float and string. So you can clearly see that the cell has got executed successfully, which means that the list data type has violated the rule of array. And you can see that variable a is printing the elements inside array also. Basically, this is not a professional way of initializing arrays, but you should know that this is also one of the way of creating arrays. In the upcoming videos, we will be looking into different operations which we can perform on arrays. For more such videos, like, share and subscribe.